everybody, welcome to today's webinar. In today's session, we are going to share some ideas on how to create engaging image and video content in-house. So in the last couple of years, we've seen quite a lot of upskilling in in-house teams because of the pandemic. There's been a lot of change due to the pandemic, but because of the budgeting pressures and staffing pressures during the pandemic, we've seen quite a lot of upskilling happening. And while a lot of us are bouncing back and starting to outsource some of our content creation again, we're still able to do a lot more in-house, which is great for helping to focus budget where it's really needed. So in today's session, we are going to look at the principles of effective content creation and how to plan accordingly. Tips on capturing content, so photography and videography, editing your content, a kind of content creation shopping list, and then at the end of the session, we are going to have a Q&A to discuss anything that we've covered today. Before we get started, I want to run through just a couple of quick introductions. So first, HdK, and then our speakers for today. Some of you will be familiar with us already, but for those of you who aren't, HdK is an agency that provides website and marketing services, and we specialize in working with those in the arts, cultural, heritage, and nonprofit sectors. We build websites, we develop marketing strategies and manage campaigns, build brand identities, create content, and lots more. Some of our recent projects include website services for Alexandra Palace and the Bowes Museum, marketing campaigns and consultancy for Birmingham Royal Ballet, and content creation for Death Drop, Trinity Laban, and the Trox, some of which you will see today. And speaking today, you've got me, Phoebe. I'm HdK's Client Relationship Manager. We've got Meg, our Marketing Manager, and Ali, who is our Marketing Assistant. So now I'm going to hand over to Ali, who is going to start the webinar.
Hi, everyone. It's great to have you all here today. So I'm going to start today's session off by just going through some of the key principles of effective content creation. So when capturing content for social media, your three basic points to cover are lighting, audio, and framing. So this means that before setting up a shot, you want to think about the best lighting for this particular, whether it's a video or a photo. So does the space have good natural light, or do you need additional lighting? Or perhaps do you need to shoot at a certain time of day in order to help that? And then when thinking about audio, you of course want it to be as clear as possible. So will the video be filmed somewhere busy or outdoors that might require a microphone? Or perhaps you might want to consider the option of recording a voiceover afterwards to improve the quality and effectiveness of the video. And finally, we have framing. I think framing is really important to capturing visually appealing and was also professional looking content. Anytime you're taking a photo or a video, you want to ensure that you have a point of focus. So whether that's a person or a building or an object, you want to pick your focal point and then consider the space around it. So how is all of the background or the other elements aiding to that focal point? What can you do to ensure that the space you're shooting in complements and highlights your focal point? So think about colors, think about shapes, other feature points. You might also need to think about equipment. So perhaps you need to use a tripod or multiple cameras to capture different angles with options for wide or narrow shots. I think framing is really key to producing content that looks really interesting. And for such a visual topic, it's always best, to be honest, to learn from examples. So we're going to play you some reels by a photographer, David Sir. He is rather famous on Instagram, and he focuses on portraiture with a large emphasis mostly on posing and body positivity. However, the lessons and photography tips that he provides on his Instagram Reels content can actually be applied to taking all kinds of photos, people or not. particularly with attention to framing and lighting. So let's have a look at some of his reels.
Today's tip is all about framing. When you're taking full body and half body photos, practice tilting that angle up to leave more headspace on that top grid, just like this. Here's a before photo, and to me, it feels like I'm in a room with really low ceilings, making me feel a bit claustrophobic. And here's the after. Oh my god, the breath of fresh air. And I even look taller with the breathing room up top. Hope that helps, and come back tomorrow for another tip and check out my course. Today's the last day to enroll into my How to Be Photogenic course. So here's how to take photos out in the harsh afternoon sun. First, it's using the sun directly on you, but watch out for those crazy shadows and bring your chin up and bask in the sun. This is the most restricting light. Second is the safest bet, and is to use any shaded area. Third is the most advanced, and is using the backlight. What you don't want is the full sun behind you, and instead find a little in between of shade and light, like here and Vogue, baby. And make sure to check out my course to learn more and hear how the photos turned out.
So some helpful advice from David, and I would highly recommend you guys all checking out his Instagram. He has some really good content about photography and all sorts of things. So moving on, it's always crucial to keep social media in mind when creating your content. And it might sound really simple, but often I think brands forget to do this. So if we take current algorithm patterns into consideration, you want to ensure that for Instagram, you're shooting at the moment in portrait. So that is the one on the very right, 9:16, straight up phone like this, and aim to make video content short form and snappy. For Twitter, you want it to be either square or landscape, and for Facebook, landscape is recommended. And I think once we've considered, all of the above, and we can then take things into account like graphics, brand identity, and color. So including pieces of your brand identity when editing videos and photos for social media obviously creates a sense of consistency and a nice sense of familiarity across all of your content. And I think graphic images can really vary in terms of effectiveness on social media. We found that adding faces and pictures of people really helps the algorithm pick them up. So rather than having a blank background and piece of text, including someone's face, is just so helpful. So looking at some successful examples here, a lot of accounts will do this by including images of people related to whatever it is. So for example, we have a picture of Molly May for this post about how much does an influencer make. And then from I Like Networking up in the left-hand corner, they've included a picture of the mentor who's going to be hosting the mentoring program. So it can be quite simple. But those sorts of things are very effective. Another option is to use an engaging image of something else related. So if it's not a person, perhaps it's a piggy bank, like up at the top, and it's relating to funding, or this clever one at the bottom left-hand corner that's included a picture of the poolside for a graphic. You swipe along and it's all about the social media updates you've missed while you were away. And lastly, we had to include an HdK graphic in the right-hand corner at the bottom. Sharing relevant statistics through graphics are a really good way to make use of them. We're not going to delve too deeply into graphics today, but just while we're talking about it, if anyone would be interested in a deeper look at this in a future webinar, please drop us an emoji in the chat. It can be any emoji you like. If you think it might be worth us doing a follow-up and a deeper dive into that. So moving on to, oh great to see. Moving on to tips for capturing your content. So I'm going to start with photography, and then I'm going to hand over to Meg, who will cover video content. So it's likely most of you will be using your smartphones to capture content. Again, keeping social media in mind, our phones are often the best fit for this. As David Sir has taught us, all we need is a camera, not necessarily a good or a fancy camera. So the first tip is clean your lens. This might sound a bit odd and a bit obvious, but you'd be surprised at the difference it can make to the quality of your picture. If your phone's been in your hand or in your bag all day, they can actually get really dirty. So try to treat your phone like you would a professional camera in that sense. Our next tip is tools. So the iPhone has a lot of useful tools. It does depend which iPhone you have, but a lot of the more recent ones have portrait mode that is really brilliant for taking pictures of people. However, this feature is not so great for taking a photo of something like an object or a landscape, because it's going to cut off and blur all the surrounding areas. Exposure is very useful again on an iPhone. It's helpful to adjust the exposure if you're in a dark or an overly bright space before taking the photo. So if you're holding down on the little yellow square that will come up on your screen and you just slide your finger up or down, it will adjust the brightness for you, as I think we saw in one of the examples David showed us earlier. And finally, the front camera. Don't be afraid to use it, especially if you're capturing people. Social media users prefer to see content with people in it, and it often feels more natural when the person in the photo is facing their audience through the front camera, as if they were addressing the audience member personally. It's not something you have to use all the time, but it can be really helpful to add that extra layer of interest and kind of personal connection with audiences. So thinking about all of that, while the iPhone is really effective, we wanted to include some advice for more advanced photography equipment as well. We know that using professional cameras instead of smartphones can sometimes feel intimidating and a bit weird in a social media context, but we've asked some of our photographers at HdK to offer advice to any relative beginners when it comes to taking a good photo on a DSLR style camera. So here are some of the tips they shared. So there you go. So James says, change your perspective. Crouch down, shoot low, find an advantage point up high. You'll start to see the world differently and find more interesting angles. Use the rule of thirds, keep the subject's eye on the intersection of the first or last third and have them looking into the frame. Look for graphical elements around your subject. Lines and circles can be used to lead the viewer's eye towards your subject. So the rule of thirds refers to the grid system in photography, which divides the photo into three, both horizontally and vertically. We'll provide a link to a bit more on this at the end. But generally, James's advice really feeds into the principles of framing we've been discussing, this idea of looking for focal points and using the space around you to create interesting angles. I think once you start experimenting, you'll become more and more inspired and more natural at finding those key points. So our next photographer, Tim Edwards, says, put the camera on auto and go out and take pictures. You have to learn by making mistakes. Later on, worry about aperture priority. As one famous pro once said, it's a case of F8 and be there. So essentially what this means is it's better to be there and just take a shot rather than miss your chance because you're getting worried about settings and the perfect lighting and setting it all up. Hopefully, these can give you some confidence to get started and trial some shots with more advanced camera equipment if you haven't given it a go already. Yeah, as I said, F8 and be there. So before we wrap up on photography, I'm just going to quickly touch on content. The content of your photos is of course going to depend on your organization and what you want to promote. But there are some general things you can include that will enhance your photography for social media. So as we've mentioned, including people in your imagery as much as possible is really what's performing best on social media right now. This can also help break up your feed if it currently features more heavily with kind of static promotional images. And with this, if your content needs to include an object or a space, then try to place it within the context of a human experience as much as possible. So some good examples here include, these pictures where, someone's holding a program or a drink, and it's kind of, from the photographer's and then equally the user's perspective, which has made all the more intriguing and contextualized with the venues in the background that we can see, those first two on the left. I know a couple of people from the globe signed up for today's session, so lovely to have you. One of these photos here is from the recent iJoan marketing, which I know that saw and really enjoyed. And And we also have, a picture of a gallery exhibition, including people in any kind of space like this really helps to bring it to life and, activate the elements within it. And then lastly, we have this nice playful shot of a book in a gift shop where we can see someone reading the book in a really fun way. We can see that the person is there, but it's not distracting from the focal element, which is the book. So thinking about all of these things, I'm now going to pass to Meg, who's going to run through some tips for video content.
Thanks, Ali. Brilliant. So moving on then, videos are becoming increasingly important to capture engagement and communicate with audience. I am sure that's something we're all aware of and probably why a lot of us are here today. We have recently covered TikToks and Instagram Reels in our webinars. So if you'd like to revisit those sessions, please feel free. The links are on our website or our YouTube channel. Again, we'll pop links at the end of the session in the chat. So you might be used to using equipment like the one on the screen now. Many organizations do have a lot of in-house equipment, particularly venues. But the reality is that the vast majority of video content on the internet at the moment is shot on something like this. So back in 2016, when Kate Hudson shot a Fabletics commercial on her phone, it caused quite a lot of controversy. It felt very new, it felt very out of the ordinary. But now we are seeing everything from TikTok and Instagram Reels all the way up to feature films being shot on smartphones. We have a quote from Matteo, one of our videographers here. Always shoot for the edit, being prepared and knowing exactly what sort of video you want to make and what the edit will look like before you turn the camera on will save you a lot of time and energy throughout the production. I think that's a really, really key point. It is very important to have a clear vision before you start shooting. So planning for a piece of content is really, really key, and you're doing yourself a favor down the line. So if it's an interview, for example, you want to think about not only what questions you're going to ask, but what lighting and background you're going to have, like Ali said, and also how long you want the video to be. Is it going to be less than a minute? Is it going to be 3 to 4 minutes? Or is it going to be a 10, 20-second clip for social media? That's going to really inform how you shoot and the length that you're shooting for. So in the interest of not overloading you with information, let's take a look at an example. So we had Gary Clark from Gary Clark Company come into the office last week to say hello and record a quick interview for his upcoming tour of Wasteland. So over here, we knew what we wanted to capture was a 1-minute edit. We knew we wanted it to be upbeat and exciting and friendly. We wanted 2 angles of Gary so that we had variety when we were editing. So one from slightly on the left and one from slightly on the right. We also have some fantastic archive footage from previous shows to cut in between the talking heads. We also know that we want a start card and an end card and some music underneath. So with that context then, we were really able to record and conduct the session appropriately. I'm not going to show you the finished product because, full disclosure, it's not finished. But I thought it would be more useful here to look at the setup anyway. We've got a couple of HdK cameos. So here Hans is adjusting the framing. This is just shot on an iPhone. And again, we can see here, again, Hans not so happy with Gary's placement. Rule of thirds, here we are. Gary's slightly off to the left in the first third of the shot. So we have this shot on that side and this shot on that side. In post-production, we will do things like making sure that the colors are aligned and that the shots are really nicely lined up. But for now, this is what we knew we wanted. If you notice here as well, we've got a microphone, which is a wireless microphone that is plugged into one of the phones, that is capturing this content. So we know we're going to have a really nice, clean audio track of Gary talking without any background noise. Now, looking quickly at the background, we've got the cameras set to cinematic mode, which Many phones now come with, mine doesn't, but Hans and Ali's did. So we used those 2 phones for the landscape filming here. We also used tripods. So you can see the background is somewhat blurred to focus on our subject. In the background, we have lots of books, a Rubik's Cube, and then this dancing man. And we decided, as we were setting up, I say we, Hans decided that he didn't like the position of dancing man. So we just rejigged that right before we got the go ahead. This setup took less than 5 minutes. And because we were clear on what we wanted to achieve, it made it really easy to get ahead with the day. Great, so that brings us nicely to editing our content. So once you've captured your content, you'll want to consider how best to present it in accordance with your plan. When you've shot your video or your photos, things may well have changed and you might end up with a slightly different product. So we have a few options here. One is editing in app. So if you're using TikTok or Instagram Reels, you can upload your clips straight into the app and use the editing software in there. Nice things like adding text, adjusting your clips, and of course, adding sounds, whether it's trending sounds, if you're not an organization, or the commercial library if you are. Another option, which we often prefer, is using video editing software that you can get on your phone. I know a lot of people are using CapCut. We love CapCut as well. If you do have any other suggestions at any point, do feel free to pop them in the chat. But essentially what CapCut does is it gives you a little bit more freedom what you want to edit, sorry. So here, as we can see, we've got an interview with a Trox dancer, Kevin Garcia. So the Trox are a New York-based all-male comedy ballet company, and they were on their recent Dance Consortium tour. So we had a couple of minutes to capture a quick interview with Kevin for a social media edit that would then be distributed to all the venues. So there were a few things we needed to do to keep everyone happy, and that was to not brand it too much, because again, everyone's going to be using it. And also to make sure that we are getting general content about the tour rather than any place in particular. So if we just skip through here, what we have got is the in-app ability to add captions, which is easy to manipulate. What we can do here, which we can't do in something like TikTok or Instagram, is separate the audio file from the video file. What that allows us to do is to cut away to really nice B-roll, like dancing footage, whilst Kevin is still talking. And then it comes back to Kevin really nicely, so that it's not too fragmented. It gives us a really nice different experience, and it's more dynamic as a viewer. Beyond that, you might want to be using something more advanced like Premiere Pro. HdK use Premiere Pro, it's our go-to. We don't have time today to walk through instructions for using it, but there are some great YouTube tutorials out there, and that's a really good place to start. So essentially, Premiere Pro offers enhanced editing functionality with the ability to edit content professionally. Almost anything is possible with Premiere Pro, from text animation to audio mixing, and a number of export options into different formats. It comes with a monthly fee of £19 a month per user. There are some other pricing options, so we'll make sure to include that at the end as well. So it is an investment, but for those who regularly edit in-house, bearing in mind that it will take a bit of learning time as well, it might be an investment that's well worth your time and money. We've also included some other popular video editing platforms here. We've got Premiere Elements, Final Cut Pro, iMovie, Cyberlink Power Director. It's just important that every organization, every individual is going to have different needs, and it's about doing a bit of research into which software is going to be the right one for you. Again, feel free to add your suggestions as well. We've also got some photo editing software here. So Photoshop, Lightroom, Snapseed, Canva, which we love, InDesign, Illustrator, Animator, and Procreate. We will include pricing in a link shortly, but these do vary quite significantly in price and functionality. If it's a lead campaign image, you might want to pay closer attention to the detail, making sure the background is perfect, doing some image manipulation, and if so, you're going to be looking at a paid option. Whereas if it's just a photo that you need a little bit of editing on, you might well get away with something like Canva or Snapseed to achieve what you want for social media. In the words of Regina George, get in loser, we're going shopping. This brings us to the fun part, which is hardware. So we've put a list together of some pieces of equipment that you might want to consider as kind of your standard for in-house. So a phone gimbal, a really good option, is around £85. Tripod with your camera and phone tablet attachments, around £30. Obviously, there's always more expensive options, which will, in most cases, be better, but this is kind of the affordable option. Mini portable light box, around £40, and a portable light box, which is larger, £65. And lastly, the social media microphone, the wireless one that we showed you in the Gary Clark clip, that is around £30. And in our opinion, a really good little investment.
So we've covered a lot of information about creating, planning for content and editing content today. So we are going to have some time for questions and answers. So please feel free to leave any questions that you have in the chat, or put your microphone or video on to ask away, and we will work through them. We'll just give you a minute or two to send in your questions, and then we will try to answer them between us. Also, now is a great time. If you've got any platforms that you recommend, please do let us know. Thank you, Rupert, for sharing the information that if you are a non-profit, you can get 10 free Canva licenses, which is really great to know. So thank you for that, Rupert. So also Bethany is saying that Capwing is really good for low-level editing and cheaper than Adobe, which is helpful. Something that is also worth flagging, if you do a lot of content creation in-house, it might be cheaper to just pay for the whole Adobe suite. I think it's £50 a month, whereas individually, I think they're like £19 each. So if you're getting 2 or more, it makes sense to just go in and get the whole suite. So we've got our first question through from Faye. Thank you, Faye. So what scheduling tool do you use to schedule TikTok and Instagram Reels? Meg and Ali, I'll let you guys answer that one.
Sure. So I'll be totally honest, we don't schedule our TikTok and Instagram Reels. We get them to the point where they're a good draft, and then we save them as a draft. And we know when we want to post them. There are platforms that you can do this on, Facebook Business Suite, for example. Hootsuite, I believe you can do it on as well. Sprout Social is another option for scheduling. I'm not sure whether Sprout Social you can schedule TikToks and Instagram Reels. I'm sure you probably can, but do correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. Our reason for not scheduling is we've had too many little glitches for us to feel confident with that. Things like text being poorly aligned once it's been posted by the platform. And we find this with videos too. Sometimes scheduling platforms, you can't change the thumbnail, or even if you do set the thumbnail, it just appears as a blank image. Currently, in terms of running social media, we've got quite a limited number of clients, so it's for social media scheduling. So it does mean that we are able to kind of be on top of it more manually. I don't know if anyone else has come across those issues or has a solution to those. We are in conversation at the moment with Hootsuite about how to resolve that.
Thank you. Yeah, so Laura's saying that Hootsuite and Later have been really good for them. Rupert likes Later, but the accessibility stuff isn't there. And on accessibility, Bethany said that they would always suggest using alt text for all images, especially if they have text on them, as screen readers won't read text that is part of an image. So thank you, Bethany, that's really helpful. We have also got a question from Alice. So for Reels and TikTok, is it okay to add text on Premiere or similar? I find it so fiddly in app and have heard that it's better for the algorithm to do it in app. What do you think?
I do think it is better for the algorithm to do it in app. The algorithm, to be honest, is still a bit of a dark art and it's changing all the time. I think it's just about weighing up what is easier for you. I completely agree. That's why we like using something like CapCut or Premiere Pro to create those like nice clean edits so that we can upload them to TikTok and Instagram Reels at once. My advice would be to trial for a little bit of time, a couple of videos or a few videos where you add the text via Premiere Pro, see if it dramatically affects your results. If not, then I would say you're probably good to go.
Fab, thank you very much. We've had a couple more comments about scheduling. So Faye has found Falcon really good, but it could be better. I think that's definitely the case with a lot of these platforms. They serve us in a lot of ways, but there's always ways that they could be improving. Rupert says Later is quite a visual planning tool for TikTok and Instagram, including stories. So thank you for that. And Eleanor says Shotcut is a good computer-based editing software and is an easy way to learn. And then DaVinci Resolve is cheaper or free, depending, and is just as good as Premiere Pro. So that's great. I had not heard of DaVinci Resolve, so thank you very much, Eleanor. Bethany agrees. Another question from Faye. So do you add trending songs in-app or in CapCut where it comes up as original audio? Something that we're struggling with. Interesting question. How do we approach that usually?
I would say it usually depends. I think it depends if your account is maybe a personal account or a brand account, an organization account. I think for CapCut, the option to use it in CapCut is simpler in the sense that you're taking it as original audio, so there's less worries with that. However, it is easier to find the kinds of sounds that you're looking for when you're looking for them in app, and you add them there, because that's where you're going to find what people are using and what's trending right now. The only issue is if you're able to use it or not. I don't know if Meg has anything to add to that one.
I would say using them in app and finding kind of cheeky ways around it. The original audios that are available in TikTok and Reels is unfortunately the best way forward at the moment. It's definitely an issue that is coming up time and time again. But unfortunately, particularly with Instagram over the last few weeks, have been really clamping down on music copyright. We've had a few clients in the ballet world who are using music that they have the licensing to, and instead of just muting the content, the video is just immediately removed. So it's very much at the forefront of our mind at the moment, with working out how to get around it. I would say your best bet is to be using original audio within the app themselves.
Great, thank you both. Yes, it is a nightmare, Faye. Sophie says that they find it really difficult to schedule Instagram Reels and videos in Hootsuite because of the cover image being blank, which is not ideal. The only thing that they've found works is scheduling Instagram videos via Meta Business Suite. So that's also good to know. yeah, I think there's like an ongoing battle between all of these platforms and the platforms like Meta themselves, where they just offer such limited functionality that sometimes it is better to just do it directly in the social media platform. So yeah, thank you everybody for your contribution so far. I think we will give another minute or so for people to ask any questions that they'd like to send in, and otherwise we will move on.
Tempted to play Jingle Bell Rock again. I feel I may have overdone it on that
yeah, one. we might be trying to inject a bit too much festive cheer there, but I'm very behind it. Okay, great. So I'm going to move on, but if anybody does have any additional questions, we do still have time, so we'll continue to answer at the very end. Thank you, Jenny. That's very kind. So if you found this webinar useful, we have some more free sessions coming up over the coming months. In December, we've got a session where the entire HdK team gets together and predicts website and digital marketing trends for 2023, which is always exciting. It's always quite a fun, again, festive, session. So I highly recommend that one as a kind of look ahead to next year. In January, we're coming back to TikTok, so how to use the platform as an arts organization. In February, we are going to share a perfect guide, a guide to your perfect website for arts, culture, and heritage organizations. Beyond that, we've got some other sessions planned, so have a look on our website, such as a session on the metaverse, accessible social media, and copywriting for social media coming up in the new year. So check them out and sign up to any that you're interested in. And finally, if you would like to receive HdK's quarterly newsletter with marketing tips, case studies from our work, and updates on the team, we'll be sharing a link to sign up to that shortly. So yeah, I'm going to share that now actually, because I know that we've mentioned quite a lot of platforms and tutorials and stuff during the webinar today. So we've put it all in one place into a Google Doc, which you should be able to see in the chat now. I'm just going to double check the permission that I set for that, because that is always okay, great. Yes, so you should be able to view that easily now just using the link. I can see that Frank has asked, which editing software would you suggest for short animated videos? I don't know if we have any of our own suggestions for that. But if anybody else has any, then please do feel free to comment in the chat. Great. Canva probably. Yeah, I think, especially with Pro, there's just so much that you can do with Canva. It's so brilliant. And for creating graphic content, it's good because you can kind of put in you can create like a brand pack with all of your colors and fonts and things like that. So creating something that looks really professional can be really quick and easy. So yeah, we adore that platform. Great. After Effects from Faye, but tricky to learn. Yeah, I think a lot of these platforms can be a little bit complex to get to grips with. We always find, there's lots of training courses available if there's a platform that you think it's worth the kind of time and money investment, but there's also lots of kind of quick and easy YouTube tutorials that you can watch. So I think with that, we will wrap up today's session. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you for your contributions. It's been really lovely to have a bit of conversation with you all. We really, really love having these webinars. It's a great way for us to kind of just stay in touch with the wider industry beyond the clients we have. So thank you very much.